We are loving our exchanges. A big one now with Laura Enever taking on the young Australian Keely Andrew. Both of these young Aussie girls, of course Laura boasting far more experience.
And are on a cut, I should say. And so far it looks like the women have stayed up to the north, sticking to that bank, but that tide slowly filling in, and here we go.
Opening ride now of round 2 at the Roxy Pro. A little stumble for Laura Enever earlier on. Quick look at the local time sees us just around 4:20 p.m. which means that we are moving into the first hour of the tide shift here. Always a big topic of discussion in Europe, Ross.
Yeah, you mentioned that tide. And it actually kind of forces the contestants to look down to the south where we are, Gigs. In front of the main scaffolding, it's kind of been the place of choice.
Will Laura, this time last year, Laura Enever not in the Roxy Pro due to injury. And now we'll see the first run for Keely Andrew. Nice snap, deep bottom turn. Little flare on the second maneuver. Now it's in that deep channel. There's a strong rip running and splitting the peaks here in Hossegor in France this afternoon. And Keely Andrew will get a more positive start than Laura Enever.
And Keely Andrew, a rookie, but an impressive surfer. I like the way she surfs. She usually kind of attacks the lip at a different angle from most of the women on tour. She's got a great bottom turn where she's not afraid to come from behind.
Stopped there by Courtney, who we were just discussing. Quarterfinal finish, falling short with Carissa Moore. Now let's have a look here, as Laura will run it on the right-hander. This one's gone through that rip zone and it's held up nicely. As we say that, Laura Enever will ditch out. A more constructive ride than her opening score of a 1.13. She'll want to capitalize a little stronger than that.
And Laura is, you know, an aggressive surfer. That's no secret. We talk about that all the time. In fact, that's what's so fun about watching her surf heats. She's not conservative. She's unpredictable. She's not one of those surfers that bottom turns and has a real game plan. And this wave didn't really connect for Laura. But again, you know, her technique and her strategy kind of goes out the window a bit. She definitely plays it by feel.
Well, here we go. The breeze is picking up here. And as I say that, that north wind will just hold Keely Andrew up from that roofline float. The king of the Groms, but of course, ambassadorial surfers for the Quicksilver brand. And now, Laura Enever continues to pick out the right-hander. This one is fragmented, broken face. She is running with the wind, whereas Keely Andrew is on the other side of this peak trying to run backhand into the wind. So we'll see if the girls stick with their strategies here, Ross.
Laura being stubborn, she's sticking to that zone. Keely in a little better area, I think. That she hooks into a wave. You know, she made a mistake there and slid that tail more than she wanted. But I like where she is. There's a lot of potential over here. This right that Laura's sticking to, it's kind of a funky zone, isn't it? It goes right into that trench. In a couple more hours.
Watching the set move through, and Laura Enever might just be in the slot here. And she is, to her feet. Nice opportunity to go up in the top corner. It's steeper into the wind, but it's also tricky with all of that air moving, and Laura Enever will spill. And now, a little further down the bank, you see the shape and form of Keely Andrew. Two-turn combination there, and she'll complete it. A little bit sluggish there, but still, it will be viewed as a completion. And that will now constitute the backup scores for both of our surfers.
Yeah, it's almost as if no one wants to really win this heat right now. You know, it's a bit of a slow start for both Keely and Laura.
What do you think?
Pete, I'm just watching the shadows lengthening there as well. I know you're tall, but you're throwing a longer shadow, so it is late afternoon. What are you reading as far as the peak that the girls are on, and should they be looking up and down the beach to any other zone at this stage?
You know, I don't think so. I think that we'll see as the tide fill in, as we see, like I'm pretty far away, but that looks like, give me a color, that was red. Yeah, Laura Enever behind it a bit, so she'll kick out. But again, I think that peak's going to stay that way for a while. Maybe at the end of the day, if we get into those later heats, we'll see that other left that we saw earlier this morning, that rib bowl. Right now, it's about that peak down the way.
Well, thanks, Pete. Don't get wet. That tide's going to start pushing
I'll
in.
meet you for a surf later.
So, Pete Mel talking of conditions here. Meanwhile, the girls did find a left on the corner here, Ross.
Yeah, Keely, again, further to the north. She's having more success in finding those waves. And that's that finish, a nice little off the lip. And so she's telling a story, and you know, it's starting to make sense. Even though the scores aren't really big, you know, she's been more consistent at finishing on her feet and kicking out of these waves. So 4.67 gigs. Scores starting to trickle in for that second score. It's going to put Laura in a little bit of a tricky spot.
So we look to those opening scores for reference. Judges bringing us that last exchange just before we slipped out to break. And then, of course, another exchange taking place while we were down there with Pete at Water's Edge. So a little bit of collection and raking of scores to come in from our panel. Of course, these are the critical round 2 heats here in France this afternoon. A late Friday with lots of people from the big town of Biarritz joining us. And here we go, live action. That's the tall frame of Laura, and she's running down the line. She's done that 1,000 times at North Narrabeen, and she's going to start working a nice little contribution here. So that right there is going to play right into Laura Enever's favor.
So watch the beginning. This wave's going to try to run away from her. So she weaves a bit, gets that speed up. Again, weaves a bit, waits for that wave to lay down. Another just little snap there, trying to get in front, and finally she starts connecting, and that third snap's actually the best one. You know, that's the best maneuver where the wave was slow enough to where she could hit the lip.
And now Keely Andrew will switch her attention to the right-hander. So the girls mixing it up, both of them bringing lefts and rights to the offering for the judging panel here. Laura Enever's requirement of 5.67. The panel is working on the score now. And it's looking like it's going to hurdle the requirement. There you see it now. Change of ownership of the heat. Inside of 2 minutes to go, a 6.17 arrives in the scorecard now. And a new heat leader in Laura Enever. And notice Laura Enever's second counting ride is a measly 3.5. She'll go to work now and really try and close the door on Keely Andrew. Easy requirement at this stage for the Sunshine Coast surfer. Well, that is what happens when you've got deep water out the back and you bring an incoming tide to the local beach. Pretty much around the world, you'll see a strengthening of swell with the tide turn. Now, 10 seconds to go. In fact, too much energy with that set of waves through the lineup, Ross. So we'll just watch this one whittle away. Laura Enever out front, the requirement of Keely Andrew, the 5.01, and we're going to wrap that round 2 heat 1 encounter up. And it is going to be a Laura Enever win for round 2. So she'll breathe a big sigh of relief. Keely Andrew, of course, focusing as well.
That was big,
on the
wasn't it?
qualifying series. Yeah, so wow.
That was big. She's sitting at 10, so that was huge for her to get past that. And she was, you know, in second place for the majority of that heat. So pretty clutch 6-point ride to finish that thing off for Laura.
Moving into the later afternoon here, we'll stay with it.